This is Sacred Frames. Sean Palmer and Movie Mike. I'm Jeff Cook. We're talking Superman 2025 and how this character overlaps with spirituality. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thanks for having us.
It's great to be here. I did not realize Mike had a name. I didn't know he was Movie
Yeah,
Mike.
I was actually going to question, but as we're getting this off the top, do I get a say in that?
In my phone, you're Movie Mike, and I suppose I thought that I got that from you all.
Yeah,
and I have
you can
not
just call
thought
me
about
Mike.
that in like 2 years.
Mike Yeager works too. I am a movie enthusiast for the sake of this conversation.
You are forever now Movie Mike to me. I don't care. There's no moving me off that point. So change your letterbox, everything. Like, you're Movie Mike.
The Enneagram 3 and branding. I mean, you got the radar for this. This sells.
Yeah, and you got your Enneagram 4 over here, who's just naturally going to resist such a vanilla nickname.
It just works. It just works.
Well, other people that have nicknames would include one Clark Kent.
Hey, segue.
Gentlemen, give me your quick history with this character. I imagine you're like me. This character's probably been in your life as long as anyone else has been in your life, yeah?
Yeah,
You've been around longer, Sean. You want to go ahead and start?
Yeah, I'm going to start as the elder statesman of the group. So I don't remember when I saw the quote-unquote original Superman, the 1978 Christopher Reeve, but I mean, it has always been with me. Like, I've always known that story. I've always known that movie. I was 4 years old when the movie came out. I don't know that I saw it in the theater. But I can't remember where else I would have given the time, because it was years and years before I had HBO or anything like that. And so I remember it. I remembered every beat. I just recently rewatched the original Gene Hackman Superman. And at some point, we got to talk about what a huge star Gene Hackman was in the 70s. I did not realize that until recently. It's always been a part of my life. I want to say at the outset, because this will flavor some of my takes. In the Batman versus Superman debates, I am a complete Batman guy and always have been.
Fair.
Like, I appreciated Superman. Matter of fact, a couple of years ago, I saw old Superman cartoons on television. And I can't remember who he's fighting, but like, he was horrible. That cartoon would never float now, because he's fighting some guy who's overweight and he's got all of these like fat jabs at him. And I was like, so anyway, I've been with Christopher Reeve as my Superman. That's what I think of when I think of Superman. That's who I think of, and kind of always been around since my earliest days.
How about you, Mike?
Yeah, well, given that I was born in 1984, I won't lean on that too heavily. But I have no great connection. I've never historically had any great connection to Christopher Reeve as Superman specifically. So Superman for me is really, it's always been around. It's been in the culture. My first connection was surely through the old, Fleischer shorts. Like the animated Superman was kind of my first conception of the character. And we've now come to the this inflection point of, since, we can broadly put it at like 2008 and Iron Man, Dark Knight, and what Superman, their superhero films have been for us since. And I've always been kind of the Marvel guy growing up. It was Spider-Man, it was the X-Men, it was Batman to the extent that it was DC at all. And yet I am, finding myself with a surprising warmth toward Superman as a character in the year of our Lord 2025, and this iteration of the character specifically. So eager to see where we go from here.
I'm hopeful to put my thumb on that as well. What is it about this character that like draws us in a way that there's hundreds of superheroes out there. Why this guy? For me, I remember dressing up in kindergarten as Superman. I had a cape. I had the underoos. I don't know if Sean is familiar with the underoos.
I am familiar with the underoos. Yeah.
This was like underwear that was had the superhero logos on it. And the first movie going experience I can recall was going to the drive-in to see Superman 2, and we got there late and it was sold out. And here's the thing, I'm 4 in the back seat and I can see Superman flying in to Paris to save the day, and I could see the sign coming up saying sold out. And I recall, like, in the back back seat, losing my mind as we drove away, going, "This doesn't make sense. The movie is right there. We could just park right here, right in the middle of the street, and watch the movie."
I remember watching the old George Reeves TV Superman with my mother when I was in late elementary school, middle school. That was running, I think, like at Nick at Night, and like in black and white too. You can watch those shows just like I watched The Lone Ranger with my dad. This is how much older I am than you are. Where you see like the pilots are in black and white, and like by season 2 you're in color.
Yes.
Like I remember seeing all of those. So yeah, it's just part of the American tapestry, I think.
Well, that's kind of my question, and I guess what gets to the complicated nature of the character in our day and age, because we're in this profoundly cynical, heated, ugly time in our nation, in our world, and then we have this character who is this paragon of virtue and hope and positivity, and so I guess I put that to you: is this character a relic of a bygone era, or is it a clarion call in this time of just such anger and vitriol, that to envision a better world for all of us collectively, for humanity, for our illegal alien friends, for instance, all of us who are in this, on this spinning rock together.
Idealist that I am, I'm of the opinion that truth and justice never go out of style, but I have to be hopeful on that front.
How are you feeling about the American way
all the
these
virtues
days?
going on? I have become far more patriotic in recent years. I'm not exactly sure why, but there are some elements of my culture where I'm like, actually, that's worth defending once you see it suddenly evaporate.
Well, that's a good question, depending on, like, are we talking about versions of Superman, or are we talking about the Superman character? And what is core to that character? I think, like, with the 2025 movie versus I recently rewatched the 78 Superman. And he has his interview with Lois Lane, and she asked him basically, what are you about? And he says, all the good things, truth, justice, and the American way. He literally says, truth, justice, the American way. Superman 2025 does not say that. And we'll walk through the movie here in a minute, the most recent movie. He does not say that. And the Superman represented in Man of Steel is not really interested in any of that. Right? And so you have these that's why I go back to George Reeves, and then the 78, and then Man of Steel, and that era, and then this new Superman. I think every one of them is a Superman of its time. Like from the beginning, the original Superman created in the 40s, it's the children of these Jewish immigrants. That's why it's so funny to me that folks are out here calling the new Superman woke. I was like, yeah, well, it may be woke, but it was woke in the 1940s, because it's real. The newest Superman is truest to the original Superman of the ones that we have had throughout all these different iterations. So yeah, there is no one Superman, just like there is no one Batman. We're saying we need heroes for our time.
This was where my notes started, is even not saying what, like Superman 78 or Superman 2025. We may need to go back to Plato and say, what are the essentials to quote unquote Superman? Is there an ideal Superman? Is there something that if this is lacking, if this is missing, you might be dressed up with the S on your chest, but you're not Superman because you don't have X. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
so
when you come to this
#, not my Superman.
Yeah. Can you say that? If language matters, you can call somebody Superman. But what is it for you that's most essential to this character?
So I'll speak into that. I'm actually going to quote one of my favorite writers, Sean Palmer here. This is from his Substack. He says, the beauty of Superman at his best is that he's not just a man with powers. He's an ideal, an aspiration, a living parable of hope and virtue. He is the Christ figure in cape and boots, the one who stands when no one else will, who is not swayed by cynicism or the shifting tides of public opinion. And Sean, you go on to contrast that in a way of Gunn's version, who is, in your words, just trying to keep up. who's as confused and battered as the world he's trying to save. And so for me, in 1978, the tagline was, "You will believe a man can fly," right? Mm-hmm. I believe that we're in an age where we're desperate to believe that a man who can fly is capable of walking or even stumbling like the rest of us. That's the conception of the character in 2025 is one who is flawed and trying his best. And is it possible to not represent it, as he says, you know, in the interview, like, I'm not representing America. I'm not representing this or that or the other thing. I'm just trying to represent this idea of good. Is that even possible without this agenda in our day of media and geopolitical infighting and what have you? So that's my broader take.
Well, I mean, I love to be quoted, for starters.
I knew you'd like that.
But
however,
you know, I wrote 2 posts about Superman because this is like your question, Jeff, is really what I'm wrestling with. Like, do I want a Superman who is humble and is trying to figure out, like with the rest of us, what does it mean to be human, and what's good and beautiful about being human versus what is really fallible and maybe we should be a little bit less human and be more aspirational. But I also wrote one that was like, hey, this humble, questioning Superman is kind of the punk rock that we need in a political and theological world where certainty is the coin of the realm, even though that certainty can be so easily punctured with relevant questions. And like, so in James Gunn's Superman, right? So we have a world. This is, I think, probably the pivotal scene. And so this is a spoiler for folks who haven't seen it. But when Lois Lane is having dinner with Clark Kent and she says, like, you're interviewing yourself. That is what we do in the modern world. We do it through Substacks like mine. This is what I think. We do it through Twitter. We do it through Fox News or MSNBC. Like, those are essentially interviews with the self. And so it's a projection of our greatest hopes and aspirations and what we want people to think. And she says to him, like, someone needs to ask you hard questions. And even if the person who's asking the questions doesn't have the answer, you need, for your sake and for the world's sake, to have to interrogate your own motives and your own actions. So he stops a war, and his take on that is, I saved lives. It is that simple for him. And you don't understand why he has such a simple understanding of the world until you meet his parents. And his parents aren't stupid people, but they're simple people, right?
Yeah, that's a good line.
And she's saying it's more complicated than that. And why is it that you get to make that decision for everybody else? Because being the most powerful doesn't necessarily make you the most thoughtful or the most compassionate or the person who knows world affairs. And this questioning Superman who's just like, I'm out here trying to do the kind and good thing, that should not be questioned. But also what has to be questioned is it the kind thing just because you say it's the kind thing?
Yeah, I think that's a really well stated point, and I think it points to some of the tension that I don't know that the film fully wrestles with, but I like that it's scratching at the surface of this iteration of Kal-El, of Clark, of Superman being that guileless, that naive in a sense, where his virtue is the preservation of life itself as the utmost. And that's if he is saving, a dog from being crushed by this, ever growing cosmic beast, or even a squirrel. And
yeah, gotta help the squirrel.
But is there a flaw in that logic? Is that possible, or is that inevitably untenable when you're talking about these global conflicts? And again, we're talking kind of spoilers throughout in a way. Like, there's an important conflict that's at the center of the film that toward the climax he's unable to to get to, because that focus is shifted. Like Superman cannot be Superman in a vacuum, and yet he has this belief system that's inevitably butting up against those of the Justice Gang, those of, you know, Lex Luthor. Like this is the challenge that we all have of upholding a sense of personal virtue and dogma and morality in a world that has very different notions of what those things mean.
Yeah, and so interesting, like these parallel scenes. I know I'm jumping all over the place because I've just watched 78 and 2025, and I'm probably going to go rewatch 2025 tonight if I can convince my family to come with me. There's a scene in 78 where Superman first kind of burst on the scene, and he does like a lot of saving that in one night. But one of the things he saves is there's a cat in a tree. And Superman, this girl's calling out to her cat in the tree, and Superman comes and gets the cat out of the tree and hands it to the little girl. And that's just who Superman is. Wherever there is a kind deed to be done, wherever there's a good to be done, like he's just going to do it. And then the girl walks into her house, and you hear her tell her mom that Superman came, a flying man came and gave her a treat. And you hear this smack. This girl gets hit, and her mom says, "Stop lying." Like she says something like, "What did I tell you about lying?" She's like, "Oh yeah, that was the late '70s. We had no compunction about hitting children."
Well, to come back to like what is it that defines Superman? Some of it's coming out here. The moral idealism has to be there. Obviously, he's severely powerful, and in most tellings is the most powerful being in the story. What I am hearing in a lot of your comments from both of you is there's a wrestling with whether or not Superman can be immature and naive. Like, to be Superman, can you be immature? Because I feel like that's what they're trying to picture here. Is this is early in the story. There's going to be a bunch of these apparently coming down the pike. So let's start with him as in that space. And I suppose I'm willing to go there, even though I think like Reeves' presentation does not strike me as a thoroughly naive character. He may there is some naivete there, but he's more mature, I suppose, than
Corn Sweat?
David Corn Sweat.
Which is of all the people who should have changed their name for Hollywood. So I think you're right in terms of like the naivete. But in that, isn't there something, I think what James Gunn is trying to say is that at this core, this Superman is good. Like there is an essential, and so like theologically, one of the things that's actually gotten lost in theological conversation, which is why I recently preached through the fruit of the Spirit, is like goodness. To just be good. To just go around and be a good person for the sake of its own goodness. And I think one of the reasons that I'm wrestling with this Superman is because I'm a Gen Xer, right? And so I know that I'm a part of a cynical generation, like a standalone generation. And Gunn is asking, can people with that much, what would it look like for people with that much power to be good? Because we have said so often, our world functions basically under the assumption that it's good to have power, but it doesn't function under the assumption that what would it look like if good people had the power? And that's his Superman, a good person with power. And Rachel Brosnahan's Lois Lane is the me of this. I'm questioning your goodness, and how dare you decide what goodness is? And it's the same question that Tony Stark has with Steve Rogers in Captain America: Civil War.
Yeah,
it's the same argument.
Which, I mean, I'll add to in my favorite scene of the film. I think the best scene of the film is the romantic scene that they share, in which she does say exactly that. Like, I'm suspicious of everyone. You trust everyone, and you believe that everyone you've ever met is beautiful. Like, maybe that's the real punk rock, and they're being lit by the fluorescent cosmic starfish and what have you. But she is seeing in him this person who, we meet this Superman as he's just 3 minutes removed from having taken his first beating. And what does he do? He heals and he goes immediately back in the fray to get beat up again. And though she has this skepticism of him and his motives, and can anyone really exist with that level of kind of unshakable virtue, and she's getting ready to dump him until he says, well, I better get that dog. He's not even a very good dog, but he's alone and he could be scared. And she swoons, and the rest of us swoon because, like, this man.
That scene is the film. You are so right. You are so right. That scene is the film. Like, I'm going to get the dog. She doesn't even know that he has a dog. Right. And he goes, it's not even a very good dog, but he's scared, but he's probably scared and alone.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
Yeah. All of us dog owners are like, yeah, I'd probably do that too.
Yeah, Sean and I both have very crypto adjacent, like, doodle mixes who have boundary issues. So with that definitely was I'm sure a warm spot for both of us.
When coming to the question that I came to this conversation with was, what does our culture need to hear from a Superman film right now? And the first answer I had also was, we need to hear about goodness in a way that is captivating for our hearts. And the second thing that I had goes alongside that is, we need to hear about what it looks like when power is suddenly in the hands of just a couple people. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Because that is where we're at presently. There's one man in our country that has apparently more power than most nation states and gets to decide whenever he wants on his communication network, which comprises satellites and, filtering of our conversations with one another, what goes out. And the question of goodness and power, we'll talk about God in a minute, but the question of goodness and power is all over this film. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, James Gunn is doing a whole lot in this film, which is why I think the reception of it has been so broad. Like, I can't remember. Yeah, exactly. No one hates this movie, right? The range is from disappointed to it's a tour de force exceptional. But when you talk to people about what they're disappointed in, I've not had one discussion about Superman that wasn't a profound discussion about Gunn Superman. That wasn't a profound discussion about the meaning of life and our current moment and goodness, all those things you just mentioned, Jeff. And I think, man, like, people, I mean, the three of us agree, but other folks don't see movies as art. They see it as just like an entertainment or a sideshow, or it's like going to the amusement park or something.
We're making a movie, not a film.
Or Harrison Ford to, Mark Hamill in Star Wars. Kid, it's not that serious.
Right.
Not that kind of film.
They're looking at your hair. We got other problems.
No, these are serious questions, It's the... I mean, I think that at the core of it, like, one of these central themes for me is about our choices. Like, the word choice comes up time and again in this movie, over and over and over again. So and we've kind of alluded to it. It's more about more than what you are about. It's how you are about those things. And so even this message, this kind of half destroyed message that he gets, and Superman is only embodied and taken in this first half of this message, and it's more about how he wants that message to end, that has informed how he goes about carrying out in the world. So this idea of our choices and our actions being more determinative of our stated dogma than what we say we believe, I think that's an incredibly important mode or a conversation for us in light of, as Christians, especially when voices of quote unquote faith or Christianity have co-opted these levers of power in our country. It's very concerning.
strong existentialist message here, and in a lot of places, of you are what you do, not what you believe, or and yeah, very much there. Sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I know I was saying like exactly what you're saying about it being about what you do, because you do have this conversation that Clark has with his adoptive parents on Earth, like after all of this has come out about the video from his parents that was sent to him, and his dad, Simple Jack, says to him,
With
"You're
great
already
power,
a good person." Yeah.
great responsibility.
I'm so disappointed that neither one of you really took my bait on the Simple Jack reference right there.
He's just a Kansas guy. He's just a normal, like, run-of-the-mill Kansas guy. I loved that it wasn't, Costner and Diane Lane. Like, we don't need movie stars. The Kents.
Well, yeah, the man. It's interesting you bring that up. So, like, the Man of Steel. Well, we should talk about Man of Steel versus Superman 25.
Do we have to?
See, I loved Man of Steel, but I am a Gen Xer.
I did too.
I mean, I would until
Hold me
I
down for
read
the
recently
millennials
what.
here.
Yeah. Until I read what Henry Cavill put his body through to get to that stage, I was like, that's abuse. Like, you should, no one should ever have to do that. Like, no wonder everybody was like, geez, like that's unreal. But what it's laying out is like, hey, like you have your parents from Krypton who canonically are part of the elite of Krypton, right? Like that's not a crazy thing for them to say. And then you are shipped to the very salt of the earth kind of folks in Kansas and USA. It is a reversal of the Moses story. So I wrote in the piece that Mike referenced that it's a Jesus story, but in more ways it's a Moses story. Like the we're going to put you in this vessel to carry you away from destruction, from your own destruction, in order to save this people is what we think. But Gunn flips the coin and says to rule this people. And it'll be interesting to see where Gunn goes with that in the future. But Clark has a choice of how to use that power. And all Lois Lane is saying is you do have a choice of how to use that power. But because other people are affected, you are accountable to the affected people about how you use their power.
That's it. Like the non-intervention versus intervention side of this, your choices as a superpowered individual and the choices of the people who you may be rescuing, all of these create a soup here of like, how do we talk about our role here? That's what the Lane character represented to me was, here's the voice of the masses saying, we want to ask very powerful people very hard questions, direct questions, and you better have good responses, because if you're exerting your power beyond any sort of check and balance, a tale for our time right now, then this matters to a lot of us, because we too have choices. This is going to, at some point we should pivot to God as well on that front, but these sort of overlapping images I think are very much exposed, as you were saying.
So is it enough that
film?
he
What do you think, Mike?
is starting to ask those questions then? Like, I just, he says, like, this is the longer interview with you than I ever gave myself. Like,
Not doing
there's
a lot of
something
soul
to that.
searching
Like,
there.
oh, it's,
Clark.
I think for me that speaks to the progress, not perfection kind of central theme of it is a different conception of the character, but it is a more human conception of the character, which for me, makes it I am much more amenable to than a Man of Steel, for instance, in which, Clark Kent shows up for 5 seconds at the very end of the film. Spoilers for Man of Steel. Like, it is a Superman movie that is devoid of the core tension that exists for me of this character existing as one among us, that I feel that and we can get to the more kind of action components of this film that I think are in some ways a rejoinder, a response, because the wanton destruction of the Superman Zod fight in the climactic act of Man of Steel is, like, I know is rightly criticized, but I think for that reason, that it just shows a lack of care for the life that for me is foundational to this character, that immediately rips me out of this world that you're creating. It just makes it seem mean and nihilistic and more a reflection of Zack Snyder as a director's worldview, and perhaps of a time. Like you say, we get the Superman, we get the heroes of the time we're in.
So here's a question, because we do have this ongoing. So is Superman Israel or Gaza? So is Superman 25, is he Israel or Gaza? Okay, and here's my question. There's a way to read the text of this movie where he is Gaza. He saves this country from being overtaken by the relative superpower in that region. Stops a war. He says to Lois Lane, I saved lives. Or is he Gaza, that whenever life is taken, it is his job to be retributive of whatever's happened? And he alone gets to decide. And he alone gets to decide the scope of the response. So there's a way to read, I think there's a reasonable way to read the text of this film where he could be either, depending on how, and that's what Lois is asking him. Like, okay, you think you saved lives, so does everyone who goes to war. And why should we trust you to be the arbiter of that?
That's what I see as primary as well. The more that I'm looking at this is you have, again, power in the hands of just a few single individuals. And even those individuals all think that they're on the side of good for the most part, that they have some moral clarity and are advocating for the things that are best for themselves and humanity. Some of the stuff coming out of Musk's mouth, I think, is just asinine in terms of his vision for humanity. And yet, apparently the resources of our planet are going towards this truly failed vision that he often espouses. And that's how that strikes me, is I think Gunn is elevating rightly the immaturity of Superman and the inner struggle. And if I was hearing you right, Mike, that was lacking in Man of Steel.
Yeah, I think that this version does a really though it is a messy film with a lot of ideas going on, I do see the genuine wrestling within it of, on one hand, this Superman upholding this virtue of the preservation of life, and at the same time that's existing within the tension of, if we can talk spoilers, like there is an extrajudicial murder at the hands of one of these other good guy superheroes.
Sure. Yeah.
This very clear, whether it's a Trump or a Bibi Netanyahu stand-in, but it's a very clear parallel, and my guess is that's something that then becomes very much core to the ongoing DC project, because it is in direct contrast to who this conception of Superman has been made to be. But he can't be everywhere, and like I said, he doesn't exist in a vacuum. And then you've got a guy like Lex Luthor, who was the very much this modern day edgelord billionaire that is a extremely timely villain, but he doesn't see himself in that way. He feels fully not just justified, but he has a divine sense of, he frames his envy as a divine calling for the sake of humanity, and that's a provocative idea when it comes to this godlike figure descending from on high. Because I think I wrote another note elsewhere, like the theme for me, and maybe this goes to where you might be leading us with the central God question, Jeff, is that we love Superman when Superman is a mascot for our flag, right? For the truth and justice in the American way. just like we love Jesus when Jesus is our mascot for our nation, our ideology. We love Jesus a whole lot less. We love Superman a whole lot less when they are our conscience. And that's where you want to be our conscience. You want to be in charge, the new gods. No, like we've got a dimensional vortex with your name on it.
Yeah, I think in part, especially in a culture like ours, my take would be something like when you are believing in the myth, as it were, oftentimes you can construct the myth to be what you want it to be, and all of a sudden you are the author of the myth. Whereas when you come face to face with the reality, that's different, and there's something about that here in terms of when it comes to God. The thing that was coming up in my mind is Superman is asking Lois for unconditional trust. I'm doing the right thing, and why would the questions, hard questions, be asked? The Christian God doesn't strike me as that kind of personality. The Christian God routinely strikes me as the sort of personality who's most interested in people with hard questions, and is really bored by people who don't go into those passionate spaces. And there is a aliveness that comes in the interaction. And that's why that was the best scene for me, was the conversation between Lois and Clark in the apartment. It sets so much of the table for everything else, but she is passionate about engaging, questioning, and, you know, again, I don't know how to land the plane here, but of keeping accountable the powers at hand and understanding them.
I think you're onto something there about the Superman asking for unconditional trust, because in that conversation, Superman could have quoted Colonel Nathan R. Jessup's speech,
right? Exactly,
from the end of A Few Good Men. Like, I'm here to save lives, and at things you don't want to talk about at parties, you want me on that wall. You need me on that wall. And she's saying, you don't get to just choose that all by yourself. So it would be interesting. And I'm sure I want to give someone who does YouTube like license to take my idea and steal it. Like when this movie comes out on Blu-ray or whatever, like take that and cut it and put Jack Nicholson from A Few Good Men in it, because it's really the same argument.
Yeah, it's the same argument. You're right.
Like I'm saving lives. I'm doing this thing, and that's the naivete of it, that you can just save lives. And in the argument is that because I'm saving lives, I can be unaccountable. And like I said before, it's same argument in Civil War. And I think this is one of the things that we have to deal with as a country right now. So if a politician says, we're going to take these people out of our country because they are rapists and criminals, essentially the argument is, I'm doing it to save lives. So in that enterprise, you should give me whatever authority to do it and whatever means to do it that are necessary. Is that what we really want as a people? Like under the
answer,
argument,
by the way, is no, we don't.
Yeah, I mean, like under the fig leaf of saving lives, can you just do whatever you want? And it doesn't matter that in the movie, that kind of is winked at as the right side of this border dispute later on. I actually think James Gunn is asking bigger questions than he's ready to answer. And the reason that some folks have responded the way they have about kind of a woke Superman is that they want Superman to be good, but they intuit that goodness lands on the opposite side of another goodness that they've chosen.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah. Well, and the question there, and this may be a related question, it's, do we want things to get better, or do we believe that things are capable of getting better, whatever that means? And again, we all have our own conceptions as to what that may look like. Or are we looking for this Superman or this God to simply prevent things from getting worse? Like maybe my favorite moment of the entire movie. So we're locked in the pocket dimension, and Metamorpho, Ellen, is creating this facsimile of a son in his hands in order to help Superman from this pickle that he's found himself in. And to his left, or to his right, I guess, is another one of these prisoners who is seeing this and just shouts out, "God, he's doing something." And it's this trying to get someone's attention, because it could get worse for me here than being locked inside this cell in this pocket dimension. And so unseen God rain punishment down on I'm being the good one here. And that's you can talk to that or all the monkeys with the typewriters. Like, the pocket dimension is very much James Gunn's personal internet hell in a lot of ways, I think.
Okay, so I got a lot to say about this.
About monkeys?
Yeah, because I've spent so much time thinking about I've spent more time thinking about this Superman movie than I have my own children in the last week. And I was thinking, why did I not like this film? Like, why was this not a 5 for me? Like, emotionally, like evocatively. And it is the freaking pocket dimension, right? Like, that's when you lost me on this film. Like, and why I probably like Batman more. I like stuff that's grounded. Like, I could go into a whole lot there. But I will say this. The central conflict in this film between Superman and Lex Luthor is that they both want to play God.
Exactly right.
And the difference is Superman is held to the floor by love. Love for Lois, love for his family, love for Crypto, which is the only, loving and hating your dog at the same time is the only affection that dog owners actually have. You have to love it and hate it at the same time.
This is a very Sean statement. I love Lewis unequivocally.
I have a dog sleeping on my foot at this very moment.
That's just poor boundaries. That's you and Supergirl. You've got the same problems.
And so Superman is relationally rooted, and Lex isn't relationally rooted. When someone does something in a relationship that he doesn't like, he puts them in prison in the pocket dimension, right?
Throw some pencils so on the floor. Pick those up.
Yeah. And so, one of the theological statements of this movie that James Gunn probably doesn't even know he's making is that love for people is actually the difference in whether you use your power for good as you conceive it or as evil as you conceive it. Lex has no people. Everyone around Lex
it's true.
Works for him or serves him. Even his girlfriend is low-key sabotaging him, like with the selfies that she's taking, right? Superman has this web of relationships of people that he cares about. And the immigration themes are asking you a question. How far are you willing to increase your circle of love?
Who is my neighbor?
Yeah.
And yeah. It's not a new question.
That was primary for me, is that the story is trying to ask the question of the nature of the hero and the nature of the villain. And clearly the Lex Luthor character is filled with grievance, with a victim's mindset, and is willing to just unleash all of his tools, as you were saying, for control. It comes back, I suppose, over and again to me that this is a movie about tyranny and how we're going to think about individuals who feel like they can play God. I love the answer here that those who are relationally grounded and rooted may actually be worthy of that, but what's going to end up happening is they're going to surrender their power because they love people, and you don't control people that you love. And the more that your love expands, the more freedom you give to others, And this is a classic divine answer to why there's so much suffering in our world, is because of God's love for humanity. There is a maximum amount of freedom that is gifted into that space.
And so you can call it schmaltzy if you want to, but I mean, is one of Superman's greatest powers this ability to love in this way that is really uncomplicated and really open. You know, he tells Lois, you know, I love the after the fact the 33333 that's kind of presented at the beginning of the film. You know, 300 years ago, the new time of gods and monsters ushered in. 30 years ago, he's born. 3 years ago, he announces himself. 3 weeks ago, entered into this conflict. 3 days ago, lost this fight. What they neglect, though, 3 months ago is when Superman and Lois started their romantic dalliance. And this is their 3-month anniversary, in which he openly says, not only I love you, but I should have told you that a long time ago. This is someone who does not play by our socially acceptable rules of, you know, when and how love is to be stated. He just loves. And there's a purity to it that I think really confronts us, because none of us can believe in this day and age, you know, Christians included, that such a love is possible. We have a really hard time seeing it, living into it, even in our churches, even as, you know, quote unquote, you know, pastors. I find this character really relatable in that regard.
Okay, so you may have just swung me closer to liking Superman.
Hey,
in Superman 25, because there is a vulnerability in like that kind of open love, right? And so you meet the Superman beaten for the first time. What you get with that is he chooses to be vulnerable at every turn as he is like walking through this story. And there actually is really something kind of beautiful about that. Like that he is like, I love you, and I should have told you that a long time ago. I mean, canonically, we know that Superman is in love with Lois. Clark Kent, rather, is in love with Lois way before she is in love with him. And if you go back and watch the 1978 version of Superman, it's like shocking how thirsty Lois Lane is in that movie for Superman.
Everybody is.
I mean, it's like embarrassingly thirsty. She's like, "Can you tell me what color my panties are?" Like, slow down. It's like, geez, woman. And so like he has been in love with her for, canonically speaking, like he's been in love with her for a long time. But he is willing to risk, and this may be like a brilliant stroke by Gunn, by having Superman's parents in this movie be so simple that there's just a purity of affection about how they go about the world and how they see the world. Where in Man of Steel, Kevin Costner is like, hey, look, man, I'm going to tell you straight up. This is how the world's going to receive you. Like, you need to know, which is like the parent that I am, right? I'm just like, you need, like, no one's else going to tell you the hard news, but because I'm your dad, I'm going to give it to you straight. Like, that's the Sean Palmer school of parenting. And so it's making more sense to me the more I think about it, about this version of Superman to the pure, all things are pure, right? And he doesn't get social media. He doesn't get why Lex hates Superman, because Lex isn't Superman. And Lex wants to be the prime, I mean, echoing other people in our culture, wants to be the prime being in the universe. So what does he do? He clones Superman to beat Superman, which is also a conversation we need to have about whether or not you are your own worst enemy, right?
There is that side of out there. Yeah.
And so the purity of this Superman, I'm coming back around to, but I really just do like a Superman who punches really hard and, and is gritty and dirty, and his suit is dark, and, you know, I add grain to all of my photos because I like the grittiness of life sort of person.
I wanted to talk about, this was the entry point for me in terms of talking about the divine, the vulnerability and the problems that Superman faces end up being problems that it seems to me the divine would face as well. The vulnerabilities that are there. One of the first things that really hit me about this, like what did I really love about this movie, is that he has two fathers with two different kinds of messages. And because of that, there is a choice that's going to take place in terms of which voice are you going to elevate in your heart, if you're going to make that, your purpose, as it were. And that strikes me as a powerful image for the divine. Does God have choices? Does God make choices? Does God place God's self in places of vulnerability? Those sorts of themes, I think, come out in here. Like, what would it look like for God to be vulnerable? And it's going to look like public perception and alienation and the problems that having something like moral absolutes really create for a all-powerful, all-good personality. I feel like those could be further exposed, but certainly are there when I think about Superman and God in this movie. Do you guys have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, this might be getting a little too in the weeds, but to go back to the idea of choice, like a hermeneutic is a choice, and
yes, it is.
So I feel like the central conflict for me comes back to, well, I mean, so if we want to assert the divine on it, is there a divine intervention of sorts in this message being damaged in reception, or the initial message as intended by the Kryptonian parents? That there's an intervention that as we, all of us have been at least adjacent to readings of the Bible, of Christianity, that have this very not just contrasting, but a directly adversarial view toward the world and what is it, but Jesus in coming in and saying, I came not to destroy the law, but to fulfill it, to actually show you at its truest essence what it always was. And that's where I feel like this, this kind of hand holding, this marathon, relay of the message is passed off a certain way, it's received a certain way, it's passed off a certain way, and so on and so forth. We're living in centuries of this happening, and yet God and the Holy Spirit is active, is, we believe, alive in the midst of all of that transmission and discernment, even that which we receive misguidedly. That leads us, to like a Luther to become our own gods of our own, little kingdoms.
Thoughts, Sean?
Yeah, I'm trying to think through that, because there was a lot there, just in terms of like reception, right? And the message that we receive, and then what do we do with them? And there's this. You're talking about the history of biblical interpretation and what we do with it, right? In terms of just being pastors, leaders, Christians, that sort of thing. There's a scene in the first season of The West Wing where Toby's having a conversation with his rabbi about the death penalty. And the rabbi says to Toby, as far as I know, that was the best wisdom of its time. And I think if you were to say that to most Christians, they would bristle at that thought. But everyone who is actually a biblical interpreter knows that there is a several step way that we read scripture that helps us discern what was quote unquote cultural versus like eternal. And so you take a movie like Superman, you get this message from your father that's like, hey, your destiny is to kind of rule over these people. Just sort of like Adam got a message from God that your destiny is dominion over the earth. Well, then we've got to start to think about like how that functions in a world of people for whom that same God has given free will. And so there's a history of like, how do I interpret what was given to me? What did they mean? And then what do those words actually mean? And so for Christians, this is if God is love, then that then has to become the filter for everything else you do. And you could easily dominate people, you could rule over, you could do what's best for people, but you could do it in a loving way and a non-loving way for creatures who have free will. And so it's never just one thing. So does Superman rule over Earth as a superior being by giving us something to strive for? Mm-hmm. Or by forcing us to be what he thinks we ought to be? And the same question is true of any God. Is the way forward giving us, illuminating a path for us to become, or by forcing us to become? And the answer, I think, is in what you do with a free will question. If God wanted automatons, then God would have made us automatons.
Could have made them.
And so that's the question that Superman is also struggling with. Hey, I went over here and stopped this war from happening, but should I have? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Or is there a role for me to say, like, I would rather be like Superman than I am like myself, which is the goal of every sermon that any of us have ever preached, is trying to help people ask the question, would I rather be like Jesus than I am like myself?
Yeah.
So I got a question for you then, Sean. As someone who has been somewhat more, lukewarm on Superman 2025, has this conversation shifted in any meaningful way? Did you end this 2-hour experience with our new friend Kal-El and his friends wanting to be more like this version of Superman?
I don't know. I seriously need to see it again, which I hope to soon. But I think it is asking bigger questions than Gunn is ready to answer or willing to answer, at least in this film, knowing that he's got the reins on the whole DCU for the foreseeable future, and or is capable of answering. Like I think about, I can't remember her name. She's a comedian who recently did a special that was on Hulu, and she was asking some really big questions about life and death. But it was so obvious watching the special, she was in no way prepared to answer those questions. And I wonder if James Gunn is prepared to answer the questions that he's asking. It's made me like it a little bit more in terms of its provocation. But here's where I think the movie doesn't succeed. It's too Boy Scoutish in terms of Superman. And I've always said if Superman was real, he'd have to charge, because there are just too many cats in trees around the world. Like, you've got to.
That's why you have the corporate sponsored Justice Gang as a counterpoint,
right? And we haven't even touched on the questions that the Justice Gang is asked, because they are answering the questions of injustice and problems completely differently than Superman is, and so that has to be put into the mix as well. Superman would have to charge because there's just too many. There are too many cats in trees. There are too many needs. And is stopping a country from going to war its own suppression of free will? And it seems to me the story of Scripture is that a God who is sovereign for God's own reasons really has a problem with subverting our free will. Both Batman and the Snyderverse Superman is basically saying, like, people are crappy, but they're worth it. Right? Like, they're worth saving. Right. They're going to make bad decisions. I can't stop them from making bad decisions, but we can protect the most vulnerable. Yeah. And so
humanity as a whole, good. Humanity as a whole is a bunch of monkeys typing in a room and getting crazy, but human beings individually are girls who are next to an explosion, or little boys raising a flag on a stick, is how I heard a lot of this movie. And this, one of the primary problems for Superman, I don't know if the Divine has the same problem, is spatial. Superman can only be so many places at once. I do think I connect hard with the best possible life for somebody like you, somebody like myself, is to have the option of growing as a human soul. And that requires a very specific kind of world that has a lot of bad choices being made. The primary problem is one that Dostoevsky's hit and the Psalms have hit, and it's that a lot of people have a lot of power, and their free choices cause a lot of devastating pain to the least of these. And so how do you wrestle with that in this context? And that becomes that's the world we live in.
I'm centering in on a thought here, because I've so appreciated everything you guys have brought up, but I think that points to it, the omnipotence question that Superman can never solve. He cannot be everywhere, and so any human, no matter how, or metahuman, what have you, any person can only ever be human, heroes included. And I love that. Yeah, we talked about this film being, very much about the nature of these choices made, and then that Superman can make his choices, but also that's happening as the Justice Gang is across the globe, as Lex is doing his thing. Like all of us together collectively are making these choices toward a collective version of good, or toward a version of the world that is all about scarcity and conflict and ownership. And so I do find that striving toward an ideal really moving, even though, like, I think we all know fundamentally is creating an impossible vision, which makes wrestling with the questions as unanswerable as they are, I think, to me, part of the text. That doesn't necessarily excuse the messiness, but it does, for me, help to contextualize it as a film in and of itself, and not as step one in a expanding, second stab or third stab at a extended cinematic universe. Like, I like what this film is saying on its own merits, regardless of where it spins off from this point.
Bing. That's Sean.
I don't know why I struggle with this film so much, and partly is that I'm trying to figure out, like, what it is that I wanted, right, to go in. And I know this for me, I do not like it in films when heroes struggle. So yeah, this Batman starts off beaten up. One of the reasons I cannot rewatch The Dark Knight Rises is because he just gets broken by Bane. Like, but I love it when the hero sacrifices. I cry at the end of Avengers Endgame every time when Tony Stark dies, and Pepper tells him, like, you can rest now. That's like terms of endearment for me. Like, just like weeping. And so, like, I want, and I think this is our religious urge, I want a good and powerful deity to solve all the problems and not ask all the questions. And neither in this Superman or the scriptures do we get that. I was just talking with a friend today. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, right? The scriptures do never say that you will not have evil. It's just saying that you should not fear it. Right? And like, I think I'm reflective of a larger faith community inside and outside of Christianity, and maybe all people everywhere, where like certainty of a good outcome feels so comforting. And James Gunn doesn't want to give you that, and the scriptures don't want to give you that. And I really wish that they would.
Gunn was presenting this hopeful vision, and I think that in light of all we're saying about love being this core virtue, I think there's something to this ending as openly and romantically as it does, with this kind of rising kiss and embrace. And maybe that was just me wanting to get under Sean's skin in reopening in honor of David Cornsweet, the great Twisters Wars of 2024, a film that easily would have been a 4 or 4.5 star if only Daisy Edgar Jones and Glenn Powell had been allowed to kiss as they were supposed to. So,
oh gosh,
call me a romantic, but I'm fully on board.
They shouldn't have kissed at the end.
Who have actual chemistry, unlike a certain Henry Cavill and Amy Adams, who will go unnamed.
My last thought on this was building off of something Sean said that I had not thought about before. Like, Superman isn't omnipresent. This is a problem, but his example can be. Mm-hmm. And so Absolutely. If it is the case that human beings actually do grow, then the power is magnified exponentially just based on example. And I think you were right, Mike, to bring up hermeneutics and how are you going to see the world. This has been a primary for me, just thinking philosophically and thinking about the scriptures and thinking about my own life. How you see your life matters almost more than what you see. How you choose to look at the world matters as much as anything else you choose. And that's a volition, that's a choice, like how you choose to see the world. That's the place that hope lies. That's the place that faith lies. Sometimes that's the place that love lies. I'm going to choose to see the world in a certain kind of way. And I suppose for myself, some of the themes taking place in this movie can be put through that filter, and something that I'm really moved by. I agree. There's lots of questions here. I'll be curious to see how they unfold. One thing that we don't really see much in this movie, in my mind, was salvation. And there's pockets of it, but I don't think it's shown in the robust way that Superman often shows salvation. So I'll be curious to see how that may fold into the depiction of this character in the future. So that's what I got. Anything before we sign off?
F1 is the movie of the summer.
I am planning on watching it based on your recommendation. Is there much of the divine in F1 worth talking about?
My take on F1 is that it's Mary Poppins with fast cars.
Perfect.
It's gonna give you fast cars and just great sound and fun for 2 hours. Loved it. Loved every minute of it.
Wait, guys.
Twice. We'll see it again.
I know we're running out of time, but we have to talk about proton rivers. We buried the lead.
Oh my god.
Do we? Do we though?
Anything that happens in the Pocket universe is just like, okay. So I actually do have a thing about this.
I've got a heart out, Sean.
Here's what made the Marvel Cinematic Universe work leading up to Endgame is because you guys have probably read the book Save the Cat, right? And so you get one extreme suspension of disbelief in every movie. So in Captain America, it was like there's this technology that lived that was available a time before you would have thought, whether it's the submarines or the shot that gives Steve his superpowers. Okay, gotcha. Iron Man, this guy is so smart that in a cave, he can build this thing that gives him the Iron Man suit. And slowly over time, okay, I got you to believe that in this movie. Not the comic book nerds, right? Not that group. I got you to believe that in this movie. In the next movie, I'll get you to believe this next thing. And in the next movie, I'll get you to believe this next thing. And like expanded it and expanded it. And so by the time you get late into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Thor and Thanos and the Guardians, like, you bought it all slowly over time. All right. The Pocket Universe, you're asking me to believe in that at the same time that you're asking me to believe that this guy came from Krypton who is super strengthened and energized by the sun. You get one of those. You get one of those.
So my most hopeful read on the situation, like, and I love, like, this is a weird film. This is a film in which Superman uses his ice breath while he's holding a green baby and a floating head above a proton river.
It's too much.
It's all too much, right? But I cannot help but believe that this is a. Now I've lost my complete train of thought. Goodness. Here, keep going, Sean. I'm sorry, I had a thought here.
I just if there was one, like, he could have done everything. He could have had all those people in a prison in a place like Guantanamo, and it'd been fine, right? Like because he's basically doing a black site, right? But, like, I built a pocket universe, like.
This is
honestly,
it. This,
I'm like, go F
this is my
yourself.
take.
Like, I'm not believing
Most
it.
hopefully, this film features, like, right after that, I think it's there's later on a scene with these nano machines, which like don't get me started on nano robots, what have you. But this is a film in which Superman literally vomits nano machines, and I'm most hopefully thinking that this is James Gunn getting all of that out of his system as a filmmaker, as a creator of superhero stories. I don't think I'm that optimistic, though. I fear that it's only going to continue in the years to come. But I like what it represents as a possibility.
Visually,
but he's super sentimental. James Gunn is super sentimental. Like, The Last Guardians was about animal cruelty. Like, that's a movie about animal cruelty.
I mean,
And
we
this
got to
was
question
about, like,
James Gunn's
goodness
cruelty
for
to
the
animals just as a category more broadly, but that's for another podcast.
visually, the
That's
river.
it. I mean, I could talk about this for another 2 hours because there's so much going on in this movie.
Yes. There is a lot packed into this. Visually, the river didn't work for me. It was almost as bad as calling out numbers and fight moves. That was actually the thing that.
No, but
I was
Lex
like,
is a video
okay.
gamer. That's the text.
This Superman has enough speed to circle the Earth a couple of 100 times in a second. You don't have time to call out fight moves from your buddy Charlie at the computer there. Telling you.
So would it have
position.
been better if he had like a Joy-Con or something, like, in his hand, like doing it himself?
The whole thing was a mistake. I mean, the whole dark character was a mistake. The Ultraman, it didn't work for me. Anyway, gentlemen, you're the best. I'm gonna sign off. So this is Sacred Frames with Sean Palmer, Jeff Cook, and Movie Mike.
Movie Mike.
Patent
Nice to see ya.
pending.
Thanks for having us, Joe.
All right.